Hello, once again, and welcome to another episode of Strange Planet, and is indeed a strange planet. And if you'd like to get a little deeper into Strange Planet, you might want to consider becoming a premium subscriber. Just click on the link in the episode notes, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. There are 3 monthly premium packages to choose from. Choose the one that's right for you. Essentially, you gain access to commercial-free listening, bonus episodes, special bonus episodes that are produced exclusively for premium subscribers, and also a subscription to my monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. All right, we are going to talk about energy and healing, but we're going to go way back into our ancient past, where we will discover that the ancients knew about the very blueprint necessary for life, for creation. And that symbol for that blueprint is ever present. It's everywhere, as we are about to learn. And my guest is a gentleman who actually began his career in fintech, and then went off on another journey that led to frequency healing technologies. Brent Knudsen, welcome to Strange Planet. How are you?
Really good, Richard. I tell you, it's a pleasure to be with you.
So let's talk about your journey. When we say you were in fintech, you were involved in sort of creating algorithms in the banking industry. Is that, you take it away and tell us about you?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So back in the 80s and early 90s, I was developing in the early days about moving money around through debit and credit. It was the infancy of those days. I mean, it's pretty common today, but in those days, it was cutting edge to start moving money around digitally like that, right? So that was a lot of my background because it was all math, and that's my background. So I was involved in the early days of getting those algorithms and getting that type of software ready for going into the mechanisms for debit and credit. And so we started a company in the 90s called Tangarine Concepts, and we built up quite a network of stores and went public and things like that. But important to note, even through those days, but I'd say mid 90s, I also became fascinated with a thing called sacred geometry, which is basically unique geometry shapes that we see everywhere in history. Like I was a big fan of history and looking at Egypt and through Syria and what was going on and why those objects. So I was a hobby fan of that in those days. And so I started to develop digging into what that was. And in those days, all it was like, wow, that's really interesting. That's what this is. And ooh, look at that. Oh, and then I started to notice, wow, that's everywhere. And then I started to look at churches, and it was in all the churches, and then it was all in all the religions. So I mean, wait, hang on, wait a second here. And then I noticed that you look at law enforcement, particularly in the states and sheriffs, and they have stars on their shirts and things like what? Well, wait a minute. That's like, what is all that? So
Right.
that's where it started from. But so while I was going through all the corporate end of it, and that was been very good to me, um, I was studying all this in the background more as a hobby, and then it became more and more evident to me that this was something that was profound that I had to get to the bottom of. This was something that had a lot to do with how things work here, right? So that's how it kind of worked there, Richard, before I started to really branch out. But those were the early days, and we built up that company, and that got sold in 2009. So that it freed me up. I was financially able to really branch out and do whatever I wanted to do.
So when you talk about sacred geometry, and I've done a number of podcasts and radio shows, and I think even a television episode that's touched on sacred geometry, and I mean, it's beyond my pay grade. I got lost after long division, so it tells you about my math competency. However, we would hear about I would hear about things like the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio and how and pi and how they keep finding these equations and so forth at the base of the pyramids of Giza or in the cathedrals, as you mentioned, of Europe. But I never, quite understood. Okay, so what is the importance of the sacred geometry? Like, what does it do for us? I mean, it's one thing to find these sequences and so forth in these ancient structures, Göbekli Tepe and so forth. But what does it have to do with me? And that's basically what we're going to get into right now. Um, I want to talk to you though about the ancients, and I mean we're talking about finding some of these symbols that we're going to get into in a moment in things that even predate perhaps the pyramids. Um, so let's talk about what
Yeah,
the ancients knew about the very foundation of creation.
yeah, no, you well said. And just on the note, you're saying that, hey, you were wrapping your head around it and doing that just like your public and your audience. I was the same way going, this is all cool and stuff and looking at it. But what's it mean? What's it mean to us specifically, right? This is where it gets exciting, right? Because it's one thing if it's abstract or cool, but when it actually means something that's profound to this very day. So when I started to see these symbols, particularly the flower of life in the star tetrahedron, the star tetrahedron for the audience would be like the Star of David, but its real name is the star tetrahedron, right, which is the six-pointed star.
Right.
And then that leads to the flower of life. I was seeing going and seeing objects or seeing pictures from Amadeus, which is 3,000 years before the pyramids, where they had these symbols burnt into the rocks, like not carved in, but burnt into them, right? So as far back as 6,000 years ago, right? And perfectly formed, right? Right. So this is what I was looking at. Wait, this is more than what we're looking at. And what I discovered is exactly because what we were looking at is a two-dimensional object of a three-dimensional object. We couldn't see it because they didn't put it in three dimension. They put it on walls and in carvings, so we saw it two-dimensionally,
Just
right?
let me jump in here for a moment. Just if you could sort of differentiate, because we sort of use these terms now interchangeably, the star tetrahedron, the six-pointed star, and the flower of life. They're they're the same thing. They're slightly different. What are they?
What they are is is one is inside of the other because what one is more what you're doing is the six-pointed star and the flower of life are all based on the 6 points, and then they triple out. That's where that 666 comes from, right? So in religious context, which is completely obscured from that, it's really talking to us about a blueprint, right? So the reason they're connected is because they all deal with the sequences of the 6 points, right? And we can demonstrate that better when you show them views of this
Right.
and that type of thing. So what was happening is what was obscured to me because it was all two dimensional. It's really of a three-dimensional object, which is the atom itself. If you look at the atom, and the way it spins through the protons, neutrons, and the electron spin, it's all in 6 points. It's all coming around. That's what it really represents. When you broaden it out and swell it out, that's what you're looking at. And why is that profound? Because the atom is every building block of everything we know, not just living, but non-living, everything on our
All
planet,
matter.
in our
Yeah.
solar system, all matter. Without going further, let me explain. The only reason something's different, you or I, from a table or a tree, is what frequency we vibrate at. So that's the create. So it literally is the blueprint of creation. It is the creating force, right? So that's what these symbols represented. They represented back then because they used them in different ways. They did it through crystals. They did it, they didn't use electricity the same way we do now. They did it in other ways, but they were forming this on the basis of moving frequency and using that for their purposes for what they were doing. And that's why it was so profound. And it came from when you talk Syria or further back, then Syria through Egypt, because Syria is before Egypt, then Egypt through Rome. And then it went into traditional religions, Roman Catholic Church, right? Then it went into the mosque. Then it went into the Jewish faith. Brought those symbols in again from the same areas, So these were profound. They're not just stuck on there for like no reason. There's a reason that the Star of David is on the Jewish flag because it has extreme significance.
But
Hmm?
if
But
if
sorry, Richard, they're not the only ones because look at the Chinese flag that has stars on it. Look at the U.S. It has stars, but it's a five-pointed star versus a six-pointed star. Why does that matter? The five represents the actual law, what we're confined, the five senses, what we're confined under. The sixth is beyond that. That's the sixth sense. So that it's beyond, it goes into the creating force. Hmm?
okay, so the five stars, and you alluded off the top to the badge, the police badge or the sheriff's badge. That's the five-sided star. That's a pentagram.
Yeah, because literally, Richard, it means the law that we live under, right? What better than on the law enforcement agent, right? So it literally represents the man-made laws that we live under based on our five senses, the rule of law. Now, that's man-made law. Then there's the universal law. Well, now we get into the 6 point flower of life because now we're getting into universal law. That's beyond man, right? That's created force,
Right.
right? So that's the difference. Yeah,
Now, the flower of life and the star tetrahedron are a 2D representation of an atom. Now, here's the
correct.
problem. I mean, you're finding the flower of life and the star tetrahedron in places that predate the pyramids, and we didn't even know for sure. I mean, I think the ancient Greeks, philosophers thought about how matter can be sort of divided without limit into smaller pieces. They talked about it, but they didn't know about an atom. We didn't. I think the first idea of an atom came about by some Scottish botanist or something back in like the 1820s. So
Oh, even like only 100 years ago or
yeah, we didn't
something.
see an
Really?
atom.
Yeah,
Yeah, we didn't actually
yeah,
couldn't see an atom before,
yeah.
until recently. So how did the ancients know to make a 2D representation of an atom thousands and thousands and thousands of years before its discovery?
Yeah, and when well, and that is what fascinated me. That's why when I got to the point we were talking about my bio and where I came from, but that's why when I was done with that I went full time into discovering that what they were doing is they were working on different ways with frequency. If you even look at the remnants of buildings in Syria and you look at the foundations of them, you can't see the pillars coming up. And if you look at them from high up and look down, they just look like a computer chip, only they're done in masonry. You look down at them, they've laid those out in certain lines to make that energy move a certain way. So they knew they probably went about it a different way than what we do today, the fabricated way, but they were moving with energy. They were moving things and doing stuff based on whether they knew about the atoms specifically, like we do, or invisible stuff. I don't know, but I know that they had the blueprints for how that was working. That was so significant to them that it was everywhere. And they used the math. They understood the math. And I'll do this with you just a little bit so that we don't have to get complicated with this. As Nikola Tesla said, you work off of 3, 6, 9, and 12, right? So he said everything in the universe works off of 3, 6, 9, and 12. And it really does because let's do it. 3, 6, 9, we go to 12. If you look at 12, look at those two digits, 1 and 2, that adds to 3. Now we go 3 up, we go 15. 1 and 5 is 6. We go 3 up, we go, what is it? 18. 1 and 8 is 9. It goes on and on. And that's how we can grab it. So we'll talk how we can take these shapes and designs and we can make them bend frequency to what we want to do. And in health reason, that's at a cellular level where we want to affect us. So we can do many things. Look what we're doing with microwaves. Look at what we're doing with cell phones. Look at what we're doing with 5G. That's all frequency. That's all being manipulated. That's all math. So these symbols are the building blocks of this.
Right.
Hmm?
So again, a 2D representation of the atom. Let's do some more math here.
Okay.
So I'm guessing what we have. How many atoms would be in a let's talk about the human body. How many atoms are in a cell? Like trillions, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. No, this is exciting. So just on that question, that's where it started to lead with me because remember we said just a little while earlier in your show, we said, what does this mean to us at a health level and at emotional, physical? It means everything. So just what you said, there's roughly about 80 trillion cells in a human body. And in each cell, there's roughly about between 50 and 80 trillion atoms. That's how small that is, right? And that's how many's in your body. But you know that you've been told if you split one of those atoms, have you seen the energy that comes out of that?
Oh yeah.
Right? You're talking, right? So when you're so now let's take one of your one of the listeners' concept of them. So they have all this going on in their body, and these atoms are exploding frequency off, and they're creating what's called a toroidal field around their entire body. And the Earth does it all around the Earth through it's a toroidal field. That's our energy field, and it's caused by the geomagnetic frequency of the inner Earth, the molten, versus also the lightning strike of the Schumann, which I don't know if your audience knows this, but we have lightning strike the Earth about 25 million times a day.
Wow.
So those two things combine, and they call with what's called an Earth frequency or PEMF, pulse electromagnetic frequency, that surrounds everything here on this planet. And it's essential to us. Our cells respond to it like fish to water. It's essential for us, right? And that's where this comes from. This is what this starts to get into.
So our, what did you call it? The torus field?
Yes, a torus field is around our body because we have these, think of those atoms, those 80 trillion atoms in those 80 trillion cells are exploding energy nonstop. So that's also going around the entire body. It's radiating out, as it is with animals, with any living organism, and the entire Earth. That is the energy that's moving, and we're connected to that. But we're connected completely to that. There's an algorithm to it. So it's basically a 0 to 30. In the Earth, it's about what's called a 7 hertz PEMF, pulse electromagnetic frequency. And here's how they found out about it. When they first started sending the astronauts out into space in the 50s, their whole body started to ache. And they went, hey, wait, there's something going on here. And they had to replicate it, or they couldn't even have them out there. So as soon as we're outside of that, we start to break down. So that's the proof of that it's here, right? I'm getting off topic a little bit, but
there's no such thing.
Yeah, it's okay because it's so important for everybody to understand that this is essential for our health, our well-being, physically, emotionally, mentally. This is our food, our essence. This is what we have to have. So the ancients knew that. They were dealing with that. Now it went through many forms, and a lot of us know it today as traditional religions, and they bend and weave that into whatever dogma that happens to be in that religion. But just so that everybody can find this fascinating or is interesting, every single major religion has those symbols in it. They have it carved into their churches. They have it carved into their floors. It's essential, and it's right in their windows. So this is profound, right?
Brent, we'll take a timeout, come back, and continue to discuss frequency, vibration, energy, and how they are essential for life. Stay with us. Welcome back. Brent Knudsen is with us. His journey from fintech, financial technology, to frequency healing technologies. And we're going right back to understanding, or trying to wrap our heads around, what the ancients knew about the foundations or the blueprint for life. And it turns out this is represented in the symbol, the star Tetrahedron, and also the flower of life, which are two-dimensional representations of the atom. And yet these symbols have been found in buildings and artifacts predating the pyramids. So thousands and thousands of years old, and yet we didn't really identify the atom until maybe 100, 150 years ago. So this is another mind-blowing thing. You mentioned the flower of life, or the star tetrahedron. We not only do we see it on buildings and on the Star of David, of course, the flag of Israel, but we also find it in nature, in particular, human reproduction. Tell me about that.
Well, no, that's great, Rich. I was going to mention that just before we go there, I was thinking about something you said about, again, back into the ancients as to how did they use this stuff, right?
Hmm.
Because they didn't have, as far as we know, they didn't have electrical power. They didn't have fossil fuels the way that we do now. They didn't operate like that, right? So that was a question just before I get, to answer your question. So was really exciting. This was the breakthrough for me. I was thinking, how would they, if they were going to use this math or shapes or algorithms, how were they going to bend these? How were they going to bend this geometric shapes to work in their favors or make it become how we work with it today? How we work with frequency to make it form a certain algorithm, right? And how they did it, it dawned on me. They had to do it through magnetism because magnets is something that when you they would have been able to discover that back then because once you have earth magnets or magnetic force or things, that's where we get them today. So magnets don't require any electricity, they don't require any kind of fossil fuel, they don't require anything. Once I've got them, that's how I use them for doing when I started to develop the technology, right? So that they would have available to them because those things would be available back there as they are today. Once they figured out what magnets they were using, they could do all kinds of amazing things. And I'll get into that later too. Okay. Now back to what you were saying, how does this relate to the human body? So once I was starting to go forward with this, and we're kind of shooting ahead, where I started to really, really get involved in understanding frequency medicine and meeting all kinds of people and all kinds of inventors around the world of frequency medicine or PEMF, pulse electric magnetic frequency. And by the way, all kinds of studies were done with NASA with this. NASA had to get big time into this because they needed it for the astronauts, right? So what I once I grasped that this has a profound effect on our cells. The reason that the astronauts were aching or that we ache outside of that is because at a cellular level, the cells stop getting the food, stop getting the frequency that they require for healthy cells. The body eliminates about 10 billion cells a day. We all lose that. They die off and they're replaced roughly by the same amount of cells per day. Now, the difference between us, if you, Richard, or myself are in a pretty good environment, a clean environment around us, those new cells only know that environment, right?
Right.
Now, if you're in a not such nice environment, i.e., that you're around a lot of chemicals or that you're, radiation or something, well, those cells only know that, right? So I realized it was at a cellular level. So that's where I started to look. And the most exciting thing that happened to me, probably the second most exciting thing other than finding the love of my life, right, was that when I started to look at mitosis under a microscope, every one of us, including animals, insects, we all start as a one-celled creature, and the first thing we do is we form the flower of life. And we have that for you. That's proof. That's a fact. Every single one of us started as our first 6-cell split was the flower of life. Now, that can't be coincidental. That alone is math at its finest. There is no sort of coincidence, and it's not just us. It's every insect, it's every reptile, it's every mammal, it's everything that's living, right? So there's your blueprint. And I know that you'll be able to show. We provide you with some things to show that to your audience, so that will be exciting for them to see, so that they don't have to, take our word for it. This is a fact. This is how we all were formed, and then we branched out from that into various. Then depending on what animal or species we are, then you're starting to get into the DNA and the structure and all of that. And that's great. But this is the seed or the blueprint of creation, right?
So mitosis, which is cell division, it's how cells reproduce, divide. We have then 6, as you say. We all start off as one-celled organisms, and then that cell splits, and then it's 2, then it becomes 6. And if you look again, at those 6 cells there, you can see, and for those of you watching this on Rumble and YouTube, you'll see we'll overlay the flower of life or the Star of David over those 6 cells, and there it is. That's the blueprint of all life, as you say, not just humans, but mosquitoes, rabbits, whatever, ducks. We got 2 ducks here.
Yeah.
All so, and that again is represented with the star tetrahedron on not only on the flag of Israel but everywhere. So it was recognized by the ancients that that's the blueprint. That's the you could say
That's the starting point. Yeah, that's the starting point.
fingerprint of the creator.
Yeah, it is. It's the fingerprint of the creator, or what I call the universal intelligence. And so once we find that, then we go, okay, if that's the way we started, then that's what our cells respond to. It is their creator, right? So then that led me, we're skipping back to now, what did I do? I'm going, how do I recreate that so that the cells respond to it? So I really became interested in this health element, physical, emotional, spiritual. It's known it's known as the Merkaba, which is the mind, body, and spirit. So to me, this became a life mission, is saying, so how do I affect the cells? That how can I talk to those cells in the way that they optimum then respond, build their immune system, and then you've got optimum health, right? So that's where I started going down the road of building that technology, which that could be another show, but that's where we went to. But we're talking about the past, where it came from is because they showed me the way through the past by the overwhelming representation. And religions were formed on the basis of this. Our modern religions were formed on the basis of this. It's everywhere. It's entrenched there. It's almost like ridiculously them laying it out for us and saying, there it is. Now, man gets involved and says, yeah, don't, never mind that over there. Hey, don't go near the 666. Well, when I heard that stuff, and going, that's the mark of the devil, I go, why isn't it 777 or 888? Why was it 666? Well, because 666 is leading you to the blueprint of creation. So if your doctrine is telling about somebody else that's a creator, they don't really want you looking at that, right? Because that kind of confuses everybody, right?
Right.
So this is the difference between now in those religions, a lot of great stuff because that dogma has the basis of super knowledge, but it gets, like with anything, it gets skewed over time or depending on what group has taken it over or whatever, or whatever the agenda is. So we won't go into that. That's, hey, that's what it is. It is. But I just, Richard, one of my main drives was thinking, if I'm going to live this life like we're all living, I said, how absurd would it be that I went through my whole life eating, drinking, loving, whatever I was doing. And at the end, I went, hey, that was a ride. I really don't even know what that was. I don't even know how it worked, anything. So it was a must for me to at least understand how it worked here, right? And so that's why I was driven, to find these things, right?
Brent, we'll take another time out. We'll come back and talk some more. Harmony in frequency and how it is essential for life. Stay with us. Brent Knudsen is with us, and we're talking about frequency healing technologies, but we're going all the way back sort of to the beginning and how the ancients knew about the blueprint for life. And it all starts with the star tetrahedron and the flower of life, which are two-dimensional representations of the actual building block, which we know today as the atom. And of course, you've got 80 billion cells in your body, 50 to 80 billion atoms in every cell. And so they're creating, imagine, all of those atoms packed in there, and they are creating what's called a torus field. Is that the same as our aura, do you think?
Well, people can call different things, but here, let's get more practical and something we can see. So remember I was saying that torus field also is around the Earth?
Yes.
Well, where you can actually see it is the aurora borealis.
Right.
Right there. So when you're seeing the northern lights and that frequency moving, that's literally the torus field, right? That is because a lot of just like with the phone, microwaves and things, you don't see that, right? We all know it's happening, but you don't see it. Well, the same thing with the torus field. But yes, your body has that right around it. And here's how we know what's happening is we can't see it with the eye, but look at when people meet each other, right? They instantly have reactions and stuff. Reactions to what? They don't even know each other, right? So they're picking up on the fields. They're picking up on either a dysfunctional field, a functional one. Sorry. Then we go to the law of attraction. So why are you attracted to some people and not others? It is the torus field, right? It's what's going on in that body, what's going on emotionally. So that will distort what that looks like. So subconsciously, we pick that up. But the aurora borealis is where you can actually see it, right? From the Earth's frequency. So that's cool.
Right.
That's really cool. So we know it's there. It's not like it's some kind of myth or something.
Well,
Right?
I flew to this past summer, flying to Greece. I flew into Iceland first, and that was the first time I really saw the aurora borealis in all its glory. I mean,
Nice.
it was just absolutely spectacular. So yeah, that's the Earth's aura, if you will. So you said
yes, or torus field. Torus field.
field.
Yeah.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
torus
Yeah.
field. So you said something interesting about how the astronauts, when they fly out, and this is going to be one of the major stumbling blocks to traveling to places like Mars, is because the astronauts are going to be separated from the Earth's torus field for 6 months, a year, however long it takes them to travel to Mars and come back, and that's depriving their cells from. Well, you kind of likened it to food. So explain to me again this harmony between the Earth's torus field and the torus field that we produce, and why our body requires the Earth's torus field to nourish us.
Yeah. Now that's a great segue into what exactly I wanted to talk about next. Perfect. So, like you say, when you go outside the Earth's field, the body really starts to break down, ache and stuff like that, right? So, the reason that is because we're intrinsically connected to it, right? Because our formation, back to what we were talking about, how we were formed, is directly connected to it. That's why, for health reasons, um, when people say, you go into a quiet forest somewhere, wherever they feel so much sacred or it's a sacred place, what it is that frequency it's got a lot of that pure earth 7 hertz frequency going on, right? But when they're in the city or interfered by man-made, whether it be cell phone towers or electricity and stuff, it's interfering with that to some degree. But people just describe it as it's more peaceful, right? Stuff
Right.
like that. So what your one of your question was, how are they going to travel, or how would they work outside that? Well, because of what happened to those astronauts, we're able to recreate it. So what we do, and that was a big part of what I've done and am doing, is I recreate that natural frequency for the body. So I created an instrument that does it, and I have a satellite instrument that goes out from that. And what it does is it recreates that. Now, I'm not the only one. There's a thing called PEMF mats that are out there, and people can go and buy them, and they're recreating it. It's multiple frequencies. It's proven to help with bone structure, inflammation, all kinds of things, right? So what we can do is we recreate it either through man-made structural algorithms, or I do it in my case with magnetism, because that's the most natural, right? So I use magnets to recreate that frequency. Hmm?
Right.
So when they go out into space, or when they do Mars travel, they'll have that built in, that they'll recreate that frequency. So then that it's like taking Earth with you, right? So right. So it's yeah. So I just wanted to answer your question, because you had a question in there of how they would do that, which leads me into how did I do it? So we were talking earlier about how I believe the ancients used magnetism to bend frequency, because they didn't use what we do today to do it, because apparently they didn't have electricity, and
No,
they didn't have those kind.
actual Earth magnets that just exist.
Because Earth magnets exist then. The magnetics of the ground and everything, they found that's how we found it, right? So there's material that's called, that we take in Earth magnets, right? They have so So I started there. And what I did is I kept moving the shape to the exact shape of the flower of life, star tetrahedron, but in the atom form, as close as I could get to the atomic form of it. And I kept playing with magnets in shapes until they could lock that force in. So I played around with it until I got the magnetic. I had to get the right magnets. They're neodymium strong. They don't lose their magnetism for like 20 years. And then what I did is I locked that shape, that geometric shape in the math so that those magnets couldn't move, and they forced out what was called a torus frequency right around them, right? So I did that in a machine form that so how it works is it starts with geometry, and then in order to glue that or put like to bond that geometry together, I use magnets, and then I put motion to them, just like the earth, and then spin it out. And I create different frequencies that the cells respond to, just like we do here. So that's without getting too complicated. That's
Yeah,
how,
and we're going to get
it
more
works.
into the technology maybe in a subsequent episode.
Yes.
When you
Yeah.
talk about, so you're taking these magnets and you're putting them in a particular array or form so that they are producing a particular frequency. How do you measure? Like, how do you know? What are you just going visually? Like, how can I create a frequency that looks like the flower of life, or that looks like a star tetrahedron, or how does that
Yeah.
work?
No, that's a great question. So, well, think about it. I'm going through all this stuff for years, looking at it, going, what's that? Okay, what? So I took those blueprints from the past and started to mold them into a pocket, right? So if we take the flower of life, I played around with that geometric form in a mold, right? So in a molding.
Mhm.
So then I molded it and I played with it, and then I put the magnets in the petal shapes, the structure shapes in there, and kept playing with it on different sizes, shapes, and strengths until it locked into the frequency I was looking for. Right now, you're saying, well, what frequency was I looking for?
Yeah.
It's easy because PEMF has formulas, pulse electric magnetic frequency. They have formulas for it's like a recipe for a cake. NASA set those formulas. They set those recipes that if you hit this frequency, this is what it does to the cell. If you hit this frequency, but they do it in a man-made way, an electronic way, right? So I thought, well, I'm going to replicate that, but in a magnetic shape. And I'm going to use the building blocks because my theory was if I use the building blocks, I'm going to hit those same frequencies. Great. But I'm going to do it the most natural way. I want the cells, they're already responding to what NASA was doing, but I want them to respond even greater because it's more natural to them, right? And so that's where I started playing around with the magnets and the shapes until I got it.
So let me just see if I understand. So again, we come back to these ancient symbols, the star tetrahedron and the flower of life. If they are representative of the atom and of the building block of creation, then it only stands to reason that if you create an array of magnets in the same shape, it's going to produce frequencies that also are key to the creation of life and to the sustaining and nurturing of life. Is that the idea?
Yeah, it's because it's how we started.
Hmm.
Remember, we go back. This is great what you just said, because remember a little earlier we talked about it's how we were formed. It's how we started out. So it was like a glove. It was like a handshake. It just the cells go, we recognize this right from the get-go because this is where we come from. Because when I said it's like food to the cell, the fact that we eat food is a secondary to break it down into frequency. That's all food is for anything.
Ah,
It's just an energy, right? So the thing is, why don't we want to skip that? Get right to what the cell is looking for, right? The fact that we eat and get minerals and things, we break it down to then build the cell. But what the cell really responds to is the pure frequency in itself. That's what it's looking for, right?
so once upon a time,
you know,
before we built cell towers and electrical power lines and so forth, before any of that, the Earth was producing. Well, the Earth does produce these same frequencies, but they were unadulterated because we didn't have anything sort of, we didn't have this electronic smog and so forth. And so simply by walking through the environment, walking barefoot through the grass, I mean, how great does that feel? Walking barefoot on the sand.
Yeah.
Tesla talked about, how he just getting out and walking. It doesn't, I mean, it makes us feel better, but it's not just, psychological. There's a physical principle, a principle of physics at work here, right?
Oh, yeah, you've nailed it because you just nailed it because you just said physics. So everybody, this will make perfect sense. Right now, we're in the world of chemistry. Our health is dealt on a chemistry level, right? Pharmaceuticals, drugs, right? Vaccines. That's all chemical, right? Now, it works. It will deal with the symptoms very nicely. You take a Tylenol, that will get rid of the pain. That's not the root cause. So if you're hungover, if you've been drinking and you're hungover, you're dehydrated, right? So what you need is you need to get lots of water and get undehydrated, right? But the pain's there. So if you block the pain out, the chemical took care of that, but it didn't take care of that you're dehydrated, right? So but we live in the world of instant, and we deal in the world of chemistry. So that's why we have so many side effects, because the body goes, okay, you got rid of that, but it doesn't jive with us, right? It doesn't jive with your liver, your kidneys, and your stomach, right? Because those cells, remember, the cells that build your stomach or kidney are exactly the same cells. They've just formed a different organ, right?
Right.
So now when we're now talking physics, now the body goes, now you're talking. Now, it wasn't that long ago, Richard, that we used to do a thing called exploratory surgery.
Mm-hmm.
They used to cut you open to find out what was wrong with you. Okay. Now we have a thing, we deal with physics. We have MRIs, CAT scans. So when they go to look at what's wrong with you, they use physics. But then when they go to treat you, it's back to chemical, right? It's back to chemistry. It's back to, okay, but why is that? Okay, that's the question. That's the future probably will be physics. So down the road, when all the battles are fought or whatever all that is, we have to go to physics. That's ultimately, and that's what we're talking here. So when I was talking about how the cells respond, that's physics. That's not chemistry. So it doesn't, the cells don't need something going into it that does this, that side affects this. It just goes, it responds to that, and it builds up, because your cells are like little batteries. Do you know that if your cells are more than 40 to 60% charged, right, there is no cancer. Now, if they go below that, if they go down, or your immune system is down to that, you're susceptible to it. Now, why that's so interesting and why that definitely works. The only real cancer that we've never really heard too much about and almost doesn't exist, and I don't even know where it exists, is heart cancer. There's no such thing.
Well, it's very rare. It's very rare.
It's extremely rare, and it's usually triggered by something else. And that's because it has such an electrical field. That's all it is. Again, this is where I'm going from. It has the highest electrical field, so why wouldn't we want to be charging up all those cells around and stuff, right, when we're dealing on those levels? So anyway, we deal in chemistry. We need to go to physics. We're getting there. We now do diagnosing with physics, and that's way better than cutting you open in the old days, right? But this is what we're really talking about, right?
The future of medicine will be physics, not chemistry. This is maybe a place to leave it. Okay. This is kind of a look back at at where we were in the past. The building blocks of creation, what the ancients knew about it, the star tetrahedron and the flower of life, how that is ingrained in nature. It's part of, we can see it in mitosis and cell division. And these frequencies that are produced by the earth naturally are so important to human health and flourishing and so forth. So we'll, when we come back the next time, we'll talk about where we are right now and what is having such a negative impact, how we are in disharmony in terms of frequency, and how we can get back to where we need to be. Brent, great speaking with you. Thank you so much. Leave us with a website people can just on their own explore a little bit further until we talk again.
Yeah. So again, I can send you to a website on some of the technology called purewavecell.com. So it's all one word, purewave.com. Sorry, purewavecell, CELL.com. And that'll give you some of the technology I'm working with. And then we can talk more about other stuff when we get to the present and then the future, what we're doing, which is, by the way, folks, is super bright, like super exciting to bring this to you, right?
Brent Knudsen, thank you so much. We'll talk again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Hey there, welcome to another edition of Strange Planet and Happy New Year. And if you'd like to get deeper into Strange Planet, you know what to do. Click on that link in the episode notes, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. There are 3 monthly subscription programs to choose from. Choose the one that's right for you. You gain access to commercial-free listening, bonus episodes that are produced exclusively for premium subscribers, plus you receive a subscription to my monthly newsletter, Inner Sanctum, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. I'm going to welcome one of my favorite guests to the podcast, and we're going to do some forecasting. Astrologer William Stickevers is with us once again, and he's got such a broad scope of political, economic, psychological, spiritual, and metaphysical knowledge. William systematically explores possibilities about the future and how they can emerge from the present by weaving current secular trends, geopolitical factors, and mundane astrological portents. He's been a counseling astrologer since 1988, mostly in New York City, and now, I guess, in Las Vegas. And William is well-versed in psychological, horary, electional, medieval, and Renaissance branches of astrology. And that being said, William, welcome back. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Richard. Thanks for having me on the show again.
My pleasure. And before we get rolling here, let's talk about your global outlook. This is your 8th annual Global Outlook 2024 webinar that's coming up in February of 2024. What happens in this webinar?
Yeah, in this webinar, we look at what's really going on throughout the world. I look at basically, I do the full in-depth analysis of every secular trend and how that correlates with the economic, political, and social factors that are showing in the larger mundane transits using mundane factors in astrology. So what makes this unique is you don't need any understanding of astrology. So in order to understand this, I do all the heavy lifting in terms of that, and I make sure it's very visual and graphic driven so people can understand exactly what these cycles are showing. But essentially, it's we start off with just a quick year in review of what happened in 2023, see what I got right and what I didn't get right and what I missed. We do that real quickly. And then we do with the overview of the major planetary cycles for 2024, the macroeconomic and the geopolitical cycles. Then we do black box forecasting, where I look at the countries of the largest GDP of the top 12 countries, and we look at and see what their black boxes are showing. And then we look at the global trouble map, and then we look at the biggest geopolitical macroeconomic time bombs for 2024 and much, much more. So we cover the whole gamut, and there's I make sure there's a lot of takeaway where there's actionable intelligence where people can make more informed decisions for themselves by the end of this webinar.
What is a mundane astrology?
So mundane just means the world, the globe. The concept back in the day when the Greeks came up with that term was that the world was alive, that there was an intelligence, there was a global intelligence that forms and informs and impacts our daily lives and decision making. So although we may have personal agency, it is not completely that agency in and of itself independently that determine the outcome or shape the outcome of our lives. There is a participatory mystique taking place between the mundus, the macro, the mundane, which using astrology we can determine what more or less like what is the weather outlook, right? So although the weather may not stop you from doing X, Y, and Z, it may delay it, right? You may make certain changes. You may decide, right? There may be certain types of situational changes that will influence the outcome of an event. You see this with rocket launches when they scrub a rocket launch due to inclement weather, for instance. So the idea of mundane is that we could look at larger cycles. We could look at what's happening in the world, at the chart of the world, if you will. The world, the earth, civilization has a horoscope. And through using different techniques, we can see what is that horoscope telling us about the world we are going to be living in, where our agency is going to be impacted by that.
You mentioned one of the things that you do in the Global Outlook webinars, you talk about things you got right and things you got wrong in 2023. Can you give us just a taste, like give us one thing that you nailed, you got right, and one thing you didn't get right?
Yeah, I actually haven't looked at that list yet because I wanted to wait until the end of December.
Okay.
That being said, though, what I got right was that the economy would continue to be on a slow grind where it would look outwardly like the economy, like the stock market is fine. We would have some close calls. But looking underneath the stock market, we would see a steady deterioration of all the different fundamentals that would look eerily similar to what happened in November, December of 2007, which many people don't know was the beginning of the great financial crisis. It actually started then. It didn't become obvious to everyone until September 15, 2008. So we're in the same position. And that was one of the predictions I did get right, that it's going to be a slow grind and we're going to see currency devaluation. And because of that, we're going to see much more inflation. They're going to mitigate the inflation, but right, they'll tell you that inflation is now under control, but everyone will know differently. And we're going to see an acceleration of that next year. In terms of what I got wrong, yeah, I thought there would probably be I thought there would be a much bigger escalation in Ukraine than there was. It seemed like the Russians did not do it seemed like, well, we knew what I got right was the Ukrainian counteroffensive would fail. But I believe the Russians would impose an offensive of their own, which didn't quite pan out the way we thought.
Yeah, it's the Russian strategy in Ukraine is a lot like the economy, a slow grind. It just seems like they dig in, they put in these defensive positions, they invite the Ukrainians to kind of attack, and then they just grind them down until,
Right.
there's nothing left of the Ukrainian armed forces virtually.
That's right. Yeah.
I want to talk to you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Do you want to add to that before I?
No, we could talk more about it in a bit. It's just that, yeah, absolutely. I thought that Putin would be positioning to invade Western Ukraine in order to invoke peace talks. Basically, once once the Ukrainian offensive failed, that he would position his troops in a much more aggressive way. Now, that may still happen. So that was one thing I did get wrong. But it may be a delay, not so much that I got it wrong, because I do think he is going to force the West's hand in saying, if you want to put an end to this, right? If you're not willing to do this soon, I'm willing to force the issue.
Right. Well, Ukraine may be in that position soon as well, forced to negotiate because it seems like the spigot is being turned off now. Further funding to Ukraine, at least in the United States, is being sort of bundled together with talks for money for the southern border, for border security. And unless that deal is struck, doesn't look like Ukraine's going to get any more money from the United States for a while. So that could force their hand. I want to talk to you about something that keeps me up at night, and I know a lot of my listeners, and that is all of this talk about the introduction of a central bank digital currency. And I know this is something the Bank of International Settlements is really pushing for. President of the EU, is it Christian Lagarde? No, that's not Lagarde. It's someone else. Anyways, the president of the EU has been talking about, well, they've just kind of introduced a European digital currency. Jeremy Powell, chair of the U.S. Fed, has talked about it, saying it's not going to happen right away, but eventually. What are your thoughts? How likely are we to get a central bank digital currency, and if so, when?
Well, we're likely to see smaller countries, particularly in Europe, begin to experiment with CBDCs. There's 114 countries exploring this, and 60 are in advanced stages, and 11 have fully launched their own CBDC already. So it's, the cat is out of the bag, if you will. So 7 economies and most of the G20 countries are actively developing the CBDC. However, there are some problems with it because the CBDC is only as good, can only be effective if there's a federated digital identity assigned to each citizen. Also, the CBDC bypasses the commercial banking system and is completely controlled by the federal banking system. So that would mean basically the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank would essentially put out of business all the banks throughout Europe and the United States. So that's what it implies. So there's a bit of ways to go on that. I would think that what we're going to see is the payment rails be the first thing deployed, which we're already seeing happening now. So before they can really have a viable CBDC alternative, which according to them will give them increased payment efficiency, right? And complement other financial services, people will be able to pay their taxes, etc. Right. So there's going to be this incentivization rolled out. You will need federated digital IDs, which is a federated identity and information technology, which will link a person's identity or their electronic identity, and those attributes will be stored across multiple distinct identity management systems and across various domains or various systems and domains worldwide. So it's really building an infrastructure in place for federated digital identity, and then putting in the policy and laws that will bind will make it mandatory for everyone to have a federated digital identity. So that has to be in place before you have before you can really deploy a CBDC. You could have a CBDC that operates on certain types of payment rails, blockchain payment rails that are centralized. Because remember, it's a centralized blockchain, not a distributed, decentralized blockchain. So I don't see that happening next year. There should be concern about it because there's privacy concerns. The CBDC will, once it's in place, there will be excessive government oversight and controls over individuals' financial activities. If you apply for a job, the potential employer could look at every transaction you made. It'll all be on a record where they'll have an access to that information. So this really borders on issues of personal freedom versus state control. I see that more happening in 2026. So I don't see any legal pathway right now, and the infrastructure is not there. They certainly don't have the federated digital ID. There's no agreement yet amongst nations, and most certainly the US will be the last one because it would require a complete revisioning of the entire system based on the entire system, like the Bretton Woods model of payment, where payment settlement right now between all nations occur in US dollars. That's one of the reasons why America can keep printing dollars out of thin air, because all these dollars get sucked up by other countries who are required, based on the rules that was set in place since 1944, to hold dollars as a means of trade settlement and, most importantly, for the purchase of oil, so petroleum. And that, for the U.S. to switch to a CBDC and to go and then force other nations to start using CBDC as part of their global bank reserves, or convert those CBDCs into treasuries, etc., that is going to take a complete revisioning, and that's not going to happen very fast. It's going to be a very political, problematic path to get there. But the first step, of course, is getting the CBDC payment rails integrated and then deploying a federated digital ID.
Should we be concerned, or are we right to be frightened by the prospect of the marriage or the blending of a CBDC with a social credit regime?
Oh, absolutely, because they'll have complete control over everything. The main thing they want to do is create a deflationary currency to mitigate inflation. So what they want to do is they can inject a lot of money in the system, but if you are required based on your social ID and your spending habits, which they will have a complete track record, and using an AI system to constantly monitor that and and constantly improve on the algorithm, they could determine uniquely for you when that money would be destroyed. So in other words, you would be injected X amount of a CBDC into your personal bank account that's connected to your federated digital identity. That identity would then provide information back to the centralized AI system that is running it, and it would determine based on your behavior, what you could spend that money on and how long it would take before that money gets destroyed. In other words, some individuals, it would take them 30 days. They have to spend all that money. And for some other individuals, because they're better behaved, they could spend that money over a 60 and 90-day period before that money gets destroyed, making it a deflationary currency, but while creating inflation, right, to ensure that economies don't collapse. The main thing governments and central banks cannot really fight is deflation, but they want a deflationary currency like Ethereum and create an inflationary economic model at the same time. And this is one of the driving reasons they really want to move forward with this. Plus, You could call yourself a democracy, and you could reelect Trudeau in a landslide again. And that's a bit of a joke. But
That's a
right,
joke.
yeah, yeah, he's only got an 18% approval rating at this point from the last poll I just read. But here's the thing. The thing is that it would technically be a democracy to a degree, but it'd be a totalitarian democracy where on the outside, from the looks of it, it looks like a democracy, but everything is being centrally controlled at every level.
Yeah, that's frightening. What in that system, is there room for, I mean, investments and personal savings, or they just, if we go to a guaranteed income type system, because AI and robotics are going to displace all of the jobs, they're going to give everyone a guaranteed income. So they'll put X number of units into your account, and then after 30 days, they take it out, they destroy it. So there's no more savings, there's no more investments.
Well, no, they would actually encourage people to put money into certain things that they want they need capital for. So government has a way of doing that now in the United States, where if you structure your taxes properly, you can put money into certain investments the government wants people to put their money into, and you can completely write that off. That's why most wealthy people pay zero taxes. They pay very little in federal taxes, almost zero. In fact, zero in many instances, because what they're doing is they're taking all the profits, a certain percentage of their profits, and moving those profits into certain investments in certain industries that the government will reward them with by giving them that tax write-off. So you're going to see where there'll be incentivization to use the CBDC in certain ways, and that's another way they can manage behavior. So they're doing applied perception management programs, and then they're doing payment modification or expenditure programs to get you to behave and put your money in certain areas they want you to, and make it for very difficult or problematic to put your money in other things such as gold and any other type of currency, or let's say crypto, that would represent a threat to the system.
Well, gold and crypto certainly would be a threat to the system. So is that the way to, on an individual level, for us to avoid this, tyrannical authoritarian control over all aspects of our lives through a central bank digital currency coupled with a digital identification wallet, if you will? Is the idea then we got to move into crypto, Bitcoin or Ethereum and gold now before this happens?
Well, I think that Bitcoin represents the emergence of a new monetary system. It's not just Bitcoin. The fact is, Bitcoin, 3 years ago, a little about this time 3 years ago, Bitcoin was 3,000. Now it's what, 40 plus thousand. And you will now see Wall Street is about to inject somewhere between 16 and 30 trillion starting March 10th into Bitcoin. And that will push Bitcoin's total market capitalization to surpass gold. So Bitcoin will be worth more than all the gold held in a central bank's reserves combined. So, right, all the gold in the world will not even be equivalent to the valuation of Bitcoin. That's going to happen between now and 2025, 2026, but it really begins in earnest starting this spring. So the thing is that when that happens, we're going to see a massive game changer, because you already have 416 million wallets worldwide at this moment, right? That will go to a billion. So you'll see about a billion wallets this time next year in Ethereum, Bitcoin, what basically token Bitcoin and Ethereum. I mean, the other coins will also be included in that, but those will be, 80% of all investments will be mainly in Bitcoin and partly in Ethereum. And so that means that, we're moving faster towards a decentralized system of finance. and it's no longer going to be a trend, but it's going to be a movement starting next year with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And so you have to also keep in mind that Bitcoin was born for a need as an alternative to the traditional banking system, a parallel financial system, resilient to global economic pressures, resilient against government policies, government control, repression, financial repression. So we're now seeing a major exponential growth in the crypto population, and so what I'm seeing here is by the time they get around to putting everything in place for the CBDC, the world will have moved on. Instead of becoming a more centralized world, will become a more decentralized world, decentralized finance, um, uh, decentralized finance, decentralized AI, decentralized, right? Despite what's going on. So that is the counter. The counter, there's the trend where we're going to seeing more and more centralization happening on the part of government out of desperation. And now we're seeing parallel systems emerge, and we're going to see the parallel financial system really take off in a very powerful way next year.
Will central governments, will the Bank of International Settlements and all of the different organizations that are pushing for a CBDC be able to stop this decentralization, the move into decentralized cryptocurrency?
It's too late. They can't. They realized they couldn't. China did it, and now China is all into Bitcoin. They launched their Hong Kong crypto market. They're getting their banks to back those coins, those cryptos. They're allowing crypto banking. So there's a merger of the fiat system and the parallel crypto financial decentralized system. They are now merging in Hong Kong. It's because China failed at it, and they realize they can't stop it. This is like trying to get people who just saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan in February 1964 to go back to listening to Frank Sinatra by forcing all the radio stations to play Frank Sinatra music. Not going to happen, right? That they would, I mean, you know, it's sort of like the counter the Cultural Revolution started, and there was no going back. So we're going to see starting January 10th, when BlackRock gets approval for the spot Bitcoin ETF, where people can take money in their 401k and move that into Bitcoin. There's going to be no going back after that. We're moving towards a decentralized financial system, a decentralized way of valuation, where valuation is now a global rather than a national, right? Countries uh, print money, and that gives them ultimate power and control. Why? Because they force you, the federal government forces you, right, to pay taxes in the federal currency. That's what gives government power. That you can't pay them in Bitcoin, you can't pay them in gold. So we're going to see a counter to that starting next year. And
That
so
sounds
the
like,
wall, yeah, go ahead.
sounds like a very positive development to me. I mean, decentralization,
Mm-hmm.
lack of central control.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds good to me.
Yes. And here's the other thing too. Like if you were to put money, let's say if you put $50 a day, you had $50 a day going back 10 years, and you put $50 a day in gold, and then you put $50 a day in the stock market, and you put $50 a day in Bitcoin. So we would be investing $150 a day. And for some people, that's not a lot of money, right, to invest the day in. But if someone were to do that going back 10 years ago, the person who invested $50 a day in gold would have $222,000 today. The person who invested money in the stock market would have $233,000 today. Not much more, right? Not much more than gold. And there's a lot more risk with the stock market. And Bitcoin, if they invested $50 a day, they would have $4,580,000 in Bitcoin. And people who understand money, they understand finance, they follow the markets, they see this happening and it's getting stronger. So gold is going to become irrelevant, not right away, but starting next year, people are going to say, you know what? I'm going to sell half my gold and put it into Bitcoin.
Interesting. All right, you've given me some things to think about. William, we'll take a quick time. I'll come back. William Stickivers, as we discuss astrology, the economy, geopolitics, right here on Strange Planet. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. Astrologer William Stickivers is here, williamstickivers.com, and don't forget to sign up for the Global Outlook 2024 webinar that's happening February 10th, 2024. Authentic Astrological Talismans, Paradigm Shift, Jupiter-Uranus Talisman Program, and the 8th Annual Forecast Webinar, Geopolitical Macroeconomic Forecast, and also the Regulus Financial Astrology, the fourth quarter 2023 forecast, financial astrology. A lot going on there with the Global Outlook 2024 webinar. Again, williamstickivers.com. The link is in the episode notes. Let's talk geopolitics and what's happening in the Middle East. Where do you see in 2024 Israel's attempt to basically destroy Hamas? Is it going to take most of 2024 to accomplish that, or will it even succeed?
I do think it will succeed. I think by the eclipse of 2024, we'll see a cessation of hostilities where a majority of the tunnels and infrastructure in Gaza will be destroyed. The scale of the destruction is going to be tremendous, mirroring the severity of the historical events like World War II, with the World War II bombings. So we're going to see substantial increase of international diplomatic efforts aimed at securing a ceasefire, but I'm seeing Israel moving forward as they destroy more infrastructure and tunnel systems, and those weapons systems that are in place within that structure from northern Gaza down to southern Gaza. So I see that happening. That's going to be a big issue. The heightened humanitarian response globally is also going to be a big issue, and I see Biden putting a tremendous amount of political pressure on Israel. And it's also going to cause a major reevaluation of the positions and policies regarding the conflict up to date. So we're going to see just more increased escalation of fighting. And then the continued violence and magnitude of destruction will only further strain the already tense situation in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine, leading to an escalation cycle of violence which has the implication of bringing in other players. That the level of destruction and the aftermath will definitely alter the dynamics in the regional alliances as they currently stand now. So there'll likely be an increased involvement from major powers such as Russia and China and Iran, and that will all be happening around the time of the April eclipse of 2024. April, I believe it's the April 9th or April 4th eclipse. I don't remember offhand, but it's in early April. So we're going to see that happen, and I'm just seeing more escalation and fighting there. There may be periodic 10-day ceasefires for humanitarian reasons because of the pressure on the Israeli government, but I don't see them backing off. They are committed, for better or worse, to destroying the entire Hamas, um, you know, the infrastructure in Gaza, along with some other assets that they have.
What comes after Hamas?
Yeah, so that is where we touch on World War III. So that's where we certainly are in the first phase of a third world war, and people would think that's outrageous what I just said. But if you think about it, when did World War II really start? World War II really started around 1935 when Japan invaded Manchuria, and Germany acquired the Sudetenland, and then it acquired the Anschluss of the annexation of Austria. And there was a series of other events. And that's all happening in the mid to late 30s before the big guns came out. And the big, before September 1st, 1939, there was a lot of things happening leading up to it. In fact, what was interesting, a lot of people don't know this, is even after they declared war, France, Britain, and Germany didn't really fight each other for a year. They called it the phony war. They declared war on each other, and there was very little fighting because nobody was really ready to fight. So it wasn't until what, May of 1940, right? When then Germany invaded everyone simultaneously.
Yeah, the bombing blitz.
Yeah. Well, they invaded France, they invaded Greece, how many countries they invaded everybody, right? So, and they were successful, and they invaded North Africa, and they were taking out countries within hours to days, not weeks to months. So it was a long process of war from 1935 all the way up until America enters the war in December of 1941.
Right. So
we're seeing the same thing happen today.
Here. Yeah. And the start would be what? The Russian invasion of Ukraine, or does it even go before that?
Before that, I think when Russia annexed Crimea in 2014.
Wow.
Yeah. So that would be like when Japan invaded Manchuria. Everyone thought, that's a one-off. This isn't going to spread. And it did.
So then what's the next domino?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm looking at. I mean, I really see the situation with Taiwan going from, becoming much more problematic next year. So it's really hard to see, you could see intimations of war symbolically being articulated in the mundane portents, but it's very hard to say, okay, this is the moment when the trigger is going to be pulled. You could see when someone is ready to pull the trigger. That's not difficult to do. Any astrologer who knows their craft can do that. Then it requires to really understand what's going on at the geopolitical level and to understand all the trends. So right now, what I'm seeing here is more of the prospect where the situation between the U.S. and Taiwan is going to become even more problematic than it is now, and that's where we should be looking for a type of event that can trigger a full-blown conflagration.
Well, President Xi of China told Biden to his face, I guess, during his last state visit to the U.S., when they cleaned up San Francisco and were flying communist Chinese flags everywhere. Xi told Biden to his face, Taiwan and China will be reunited.
Right.
So he's laid down the gauntlet.
Right. And his position in power and his ability to sustain power is all predicated on Taiwan. His reelection, his third reelection, is completely predicated on reacquiring Taiwan before the end of his term in 2027 or 2028. I think it's 2027.
So if he fails to do so, he's out.
He'll be out. They'll take him out. You know, this is China. This is not Canada. This is China. They'll take him out. Like Russia, they'll take him out. If Putin would have backed down 1 inch, they would take him out. You're talking about completely different civilizations, completely different cultures. Yeah.
Yeah, they do it. Well, they do it in the United States. It's just a little different. their methodology.
That's right. Like what they're doing to Trump, of course, right?
Yes.
They got to take him out.
That's right.
Trump is a greater threat to the deep state than Xi Jinping or Putin ever was combined. He's a greater threat to them.
Well, let's take another time out. When we come back, let's talk about 2024 and November 2024 and who the combatants, who the nominees will be. I mean, Joe Biden's certainly not a shoo-in at this point. I have serious doubts whether he can survive another 6 months, let alone another 11 months. Back with William Stickever, astrologer, when Strange Planet continues. Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there. All right, so most of us assume, that Trump will be the nominee, although, we know that the Democrats and the weaponized departments of justice and so forth are going to try right to the bitter end to find any way, hook or by crook, to eliminate him, whether it's taking him off ballots in various states and so forth. It doesn't seem to matter whatever they do. He just continues to galvanize his support, and the Democrats are just bleeding one constituency after another: the Hispanic vote, the black male vote, suburban women, young people now all voting for Trump. Is he going to be the nominee? What do the stars say?
Absolutely, he'll be the nominee. There is a 82% chance he will be the nominee. 82%. DeSantis, about a 12% chance. And when I look at Nikki Haley, that's all artificially created. She has less than a 4% chance. She will bomb. I mean, Nikki Haley is a creation of the deep state. So yeah. So first of all, the Supreme Court is going to reverse. That's another prediction. They're going to reverse any ruling that was made by the Colorado Supreme Court. They're going to find that. They're going to throw that out right away. Secondly, this is only going to galvanize Trump even further. What most people don't seem to realize is that the Colorado decision, on top of everything else they're doing to Trump, is only going to make his poll numbers rise even more, making it more likely that Trump will beat and defeat Biden decisively in November of 2024. So it's just amazing to me that it seems like the too smart to fail Democrats and the deep state operatives are doing Trump's work for him.
The question to me is, though, is Joe Biden going to be the nominee? I can't imagine, given, I mean, he's one fall away from ending up in a long-term care facility, and the mental deterioration is just accelerating.
Right.
I can't imagine he's going to survive until November. And we hear, I was just speaking with Wayne Allen Root on my daily program, and he seems pretty confident it's going to be Michelle Obama because they're having the convention in Chicago. That's the Obama's old stomping grounds. That would be a great place to coronate Michelle Obama. What did the stars say?
My stars say no Michelle Obama. 0 on that one. Okay. So I look at her chart, and I've had every astrologist tell me, you're going to be wrong on this. You're going to be wrong. I'm like, no, I'm seeing, in terms of the astrology, and as much as this is embarrassing to say, that Kamala Harris's chart is showing more and more strength. So this is what I see playing out here. They'll let Biden win all the different primaries. He doesn't have to show up. He's going to use a rose garden strategy. There's no campaigning, right? And the Democrats will vote for Biden regardless. So everyone that voted for Biden in 2020 are going to vote for him regardless. That number is not going to move. That's a solid number, right? Everybody else is going to be split between voting for Trump and voting for RFK Jr. And in terms of Biden, I see his deterioration accelerating and intensifying. I mean, it's already at a point where, it's a mystery to me why the Democrats and the deep state, for that matter, keep backing him. He's fast becoming a punchline of jokes, not just at home, but around the world. And so it just shows me that they're acting totally out of desperation. So Biden is not a shoo-in for the Oval Office in 2025, starting January 2025. But they want you to believe that. And that is why you're going to see the same person who voted. Well, let me just put it this way. A majority of the people who voted for Biden will vote for Biden regardless what goes on in 2024. We could be in a full-blown depression. We could have World War III with China. We could have all these tragic things happening, and they will still vote Democrat on the ticket. But those who've been impacted, right, where they haven't seen Bidenomics work to their advantage, or, because there's going to be a lot of touting that Bidenomics is working, they're going to deny a recession. The recession is coming. Credit markets are going to start cracking up. They're going to have to reverse the interest rates. They're going to start putting stimulation and liquidating and offer a lot of candy out there in order to prevent a full-blown economic debacle. And in that process, they will deny a recession is going on. But the people who get impacted by that, who feel they can't vote for Trump, will vote for RFK. So that is going to hurt the Democrat platform, where you're going to see disaffected voters who voted Democrat last time vote for RFK or any other independent. And it will be enough to give Trump a decisive edge, particularly in Georgia, Wisconsin, and Arizona. The 3 states he must win. If he wins those states, then he wins.
And if it's not, well, the stars are saying Biden is going to be the nominee, or
the stars are saying that Biden will not be the nominee. The question is like I'm asking myself, it will Kamala be the nominee, or will somebody else be pulled in? So
it's not Michelle Obama. Definitely
not Michelle Obama. And here's the reason why. It's very simple. When Xi Jinping came to San Francisco, who did he first meet with and spent a good time talking to? The governor of what?
Oh, Gavin Newsom, California.
That's right. What does that tell you?
Interesting.
The DNC and the deep state have determined that Gavin Newsom is going to be the person they plan to pop in last second in a contested convention between Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom. However, Harris's astrology is very strong this year. I'm going into next year. It's very strong. So,
interesting.
Yes. So I wouldn't take her out. I mean, I think it'd be great if it was Kamala versus Trump. That would just be a great election, right? So, I
It'd
mean,
be a great debate. I would love to see
very,
her on the debate stage. Good Lord.
right. So, the thing is that it's not going to be Michelle Obama. That much we can be certain about. Um, the question is, who is it going to be? Who is it going to be? And based on all the evidence, it's going to be basically a battle between those two
Are the
at the
Democrats going to
convention.
try and steal it?
Well, that's another issue. That's something we could revisit in another show,
Okay.
because that would just take that we should dedicate time in terms of how they're going to steal it, how they would steal it if they're going to steal it, and what would Trump have to do, or how would the vote have to turn out in order to prevent that from happening.
All right. We saw in Argentina the election of Javier Milei, who calls himself a radical libertarian and an anarcho-capitalist. He's also been called a chainsaw Thatcherite, which I love.
Right.
Do you see a further rise of, let's call them, national populist parties and governments in, let's say, South America and in Europe in 2024? We've got elections coming up in Europe in 24 and in 25.
Yes, I do. We have a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. The last time we had that was back in 2010, 2011. What did we have? We had Arab Spring. We had 24 countries go into full-blown revolution and remove fundamentalist Muslim Brotherhood governments, which anybody would say that's just totally impossible. You'll never see the Muslim Brotherhood-based fundamentalist governments be removed. They've been in power since World War II. And they ruled by an iron fist, and they were all removed and removed very quickly. People don't talk about that. Right? So the type of grassroots activism movements, it's just not going to be exclusive to South America. It's going to be worldwide. This is going worldwide. Political reform is going, it's going to rise up during any campaign. And I believe there's 40 elections next year. There's over 40 elections worldwide next year. That there's more elections going on than any other time. A record number of elections will be held next year. So we're going to see major repolarization, and we're going to see the youth generation very energized. The millennials are going to determine who's going to be president, who's going to be senator, who's going to be prime minister. All the anyone who's born 1961 or earlier are not going to have any impact in determining the election like they have been for the past 30, 40 years. So the past 40 years, whatever the baby boomers have been focused on, right, we could pretty much determine who's going to be the nominees and who would ultimately win. This is the big game changer that nobody sees coming.
Gen X, their time has arrived.
The Gen X and the millennials.
Yeah.
The Gen X and particularly the millennials. So they're going to be really energized this time because they feel jilted.
What's Europe going to look like in the next several years in terms of the composition of governments? Is it going more right, more nationalist, populist, more right wing?
I see, like, for instance, AfD, which is like an alt-right movement
Alternative
in
for
Germany.
Deutschland.
Yeah, in Deutschland, right? They're definitely, I see that gaining power. I think they're going to be the dominant party. So I do see I see those type of movements like they're like what we saw in we just recently saw in Dutch elections,
Yes.
right? So we're going to see that all come back in sweeping numbers next year. Maverick independent third-party candidacies you would say, oh yeah, that guy has great positions and I would vote for him, but he'll never make it. He's going to make it, or she's going to make it. The people who capture the anti-establishment mood, but have real substance to them, are going to upend the traditional partisan dynamics that have been dominating since 1945.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to bring it back to the United States then for a minute. Having just heard what you said, um, let me ask you about the future. I don't know. I didn't ask you about this before. I don't want to put you on the spot, but it just struck me when you're talking about, young people, upstarts, people with substance. Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah.
What do you have you looked at his charts recently? What do you see for his future?
Yeah, I mean, his chart is very powerfully activated at this time. It's possible that Trump could pick him as a VP, or we may see a female millennial or Gen X VP. So I'm looking at or certainly I would have said this about uh DeSantis, who's also a Gen Xer. I would have said DeSantis would be definitely the VP, but he's taken such an anti-Trump position and tripled down on it. I think it's almost impossible to reconcile that. But it's still in politics, right? It makes interesting bedfellows,
Yes.
especially when you have extreme partisan, when you have very extremist type of politics happening at the grassroots level. And that's exactly what I see happening. So we're going to see a Gen Xer president, the first Gen Xer president in 2028. That's 100% probability. We're not going to see it happen in 2025. But by January 2029, the first Gen Xer, possibly millennial, will become president. And that's the transition that we're seeing. And the people are going to make that happen. And the people, this particular election is going to determine who's going to be the leaders going out for the next 30 years, next 20, 30 years, starting with this election.
Last question, and has to do with UFOs, UAPs, ET disclosure. We've had some explosive testimony from military whistleblowers, David Grush and others. Where do you see 2024 taking us vis-a-vis disclosure?
Yeah, so in terms of what Jupiter Uranus will do in terms of how it's connected to the body politic, the implications could be a potential catastrophic UAP disclosure event. And that would entail where instead of where there was a legal pathway to do a structured disclosure, now that's all been basically pulled. That's off the table now. So what I'm seeing here is we're going to be more explosive leaks, more whistleblowers coming forward, more hearings, more direct eyewitnesses, more. We're going to see catastrophic or uncontrolled disclosure, which I would characterize as a chaotic release of compelling, convincing, earth-shattering revelations from high-level whistleblowers. Like we're going to have an Edward Snowden or a series of Edward Snowdens who go to journalists, present the evidence, present their cases, and this all starts happening like globally. It's not just coming out of one newspaper in Germany, for instance. It's going to be happening everywhere and all at once, which will result in profound geopolitical, social, and economic upheaval while the election is going on, while the
Wow.
U.S. election is going on.
Oh.
Yes. That's the thing a lot of people aren't thinking about. The Biden administration does not want disclosure. That's become very clear. Trump, on the other hand, he wants to be the disclosure president because that would put his place in history. He'll be remembered as the guy who disclosed the greatest secret cover-up and revelation in the history of humanity.
Maybe
That's
it'll
his
all
goal.
maybe disclosure will happen on Tucker Carlson's new network.
Right. So that certainly Tucker Carlson will be an agent. It could be you. It could be coast to coast. It could be all of you happening simultaneously where catastrophic uncontrolled disclosure begins and accelerates and intensifies. So it begins starting around April of next year. Everything goes quiet. Everyone thinks it's all over with. The bill didn't get pushed through. They took out all the provisions, or they made it a toothless UFO disclosure bill. right? They're going to go back to their old tricks, and then boom.
Are you positive? You feeling positive about the future, the immediate future, or is it going to be a rough road for a while?
It's going to be a rough road, but it's getting clearer. There's going to be more clarity this time. It's going to become much clearer where the future is moving towards. I'm not pessimistic at all. I think we're just overdue. This is all overdue. This all needs to happen. And it needs to happen sooner rather than later, because we're going to be transitioning into a new period starting 2032. So we need to get this all settled. We've created a fractional reserve banking system that's unsustainable, a fiat-based system that's unsustainable. The structure of government since 1945 and the way the role government is played is unsustainable. So all of these systems are collapsing. All these institutions are collapsing, and it needs to happen actually faster. In the chaos will emerge a whole new system that will be sustainable, that will move us towards a 21st century type 1 civilization.
All right. Make sure to sign up for the Global Outlook 2024 webinar, williamstickovers.com. The link is in the episode notes. And always a pleasure, William. We'll do this again, obviously, before the election. There's much to discuss. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard, for having me again.
Hi there. If you want to watch the rest of these episodes, please head over to my Rumble channel, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. You can watch complete episodes there. New, complete, unedited episodes drop every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, the Rumble channel is Richard Syrett's Strange Planet. In the meantime, I want to thank you for supporting this YouTube channel all of these years. However, the problem is I never know when I'm going to run afoul of the censors at YouTube. I never know when I'm going to end up in YouTube jail. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. And in fact, 2 more strikes and this YouTube channel will be taken down altogether. So help me fight big tech censorship, enjoy the complete unedited episodes, and join the rest of the Strange Planet community over on Rumble. Again, Richard Syrett's Strange Planet on rumble.com. See you over there.